The fundamental idea of the perceptual relativity argument, looking at the picture of Locke's theory of perception, is that the only access that we have to item A, the thing in the real world, is through item D. Now, the thing in the real world, or item D, changes depending on the angle that we're looking at it. The thing out there in the real world, A, doesn't change depending on where C, Feldman, is standing. As a result, it looks like the things that are up in our cognitive facilities, D, in our mind, so to speak, there's no way to compare. That is, the things that are up there are different than the things out there, because the things in our mind change depending on our perceptual angle. The thing out in the world does not. Well, along comes George Berkeley to help out empiricism, to save. He's become the knight in shining armor for empiricism. And what happens on Berkeley's picture? Well, the items D are the things that are really in the world. That is to be perceived. What really exists is just those sense data that we have, those sensations that we have. That is, the object in the world isn't made of molecules, it's not made of atoms, it's not made of these funny physical things, because we can't possibly know anything about those physical things, but rather what we can and what we do know about is the way it does appear, and the item in the world is made up of all of those ways the thing can appear. So the thing out in the world just is that mental object, and what keeps it from disappearing. Now, so far it's okay, because, as we'll see in a second, it provides us an answer to the perceptual relativity argument. That is, we're going to find out that if we follow Berkeley's idealism, or which is sometimes called his phenomenalism. Remember, it's phenomenalism because the only thing that's there are the phenomena, the sensations, the thing that's in our mind. So Berkeley's point is that's what the thing in the world is made of. We have no basis for jumping out to the real world. That is, that in looking at the perceptual relativity argument, well, the first premise seems okay, but the second premise in the argument is really the problematic one. That is, the real table does not have different properties under different perceptual conditions. Berkeley says, well, yes, the real table does. That's exactly what the real table is. Berkeley's answer to this argument is just that second premise is false, that the real table is just made up of these sense data, these perceptions. Now, it seems to many that this theory is kind of odd, kind of strange, and the strangeness of the theory is that it looks like, or people are led to believe, to be is to be perceived. So that means if I'm not perceiving the table, I walk out of the room, the table disappears, which is looks like a very, very, very weird consequence of the theory. Which looks like a very, very, very odd consequence of the theory. But that's not to understand the totality of Berkeley's theory. God is also part of Berkeley's ontology. It's one of the things in the world. And God is always has these perceptions in mind, and God is sort of the glue that is holding the real world together. People worry, well, Berkeley's view, this is what the scientists are telling us is wrong. And that's not the case, because on Berkeley's view, the scientists come up with theoretical entities, things like atoms, molecules. And it's not to be taken literally that really the world is made up of these things, but rather they are ways for us to understand the behavior of the things that we think we're perceiving. That is, our experiences of the world are regular and orderly. And we can even have these conjectures, this explanation that there are these properties that these things have in the world, and they behave in this way because they have these properties. But that's not to be taken as literally true. Rather, it's just a good explanation for why the world appears to be regular and orderly. And those are what the scientific principles are supposed to be. Those are what the laws of science tell us. And it helps us build bridges, for example. But nonetheless, they are not literally true. They're really literally, there are not molecules and atoms. There are simply perceptions. Now that leaves people with an uncomfortable feeling. I'm not quite sure why. Perhaps it's the same as Descartes. They don't like bringing God in the picture. Is that they kind of have this intuition that even if God didn't exist, we would still have knowledge. And it's strange that somehow God ultimately rears his head into our epistemic, our perceptual, our knowledge gathering senses, a knowledge gathering process. So people are not 100% comfortable, even though we start out, they didn't like Descartes, they liked Locke, but there was this fundamental property which kind of led to an answer to that fundamental problem. I think I said fundamental property. There was a fundamental problem with Locke's answer, and it led Berkeley to what did result is Berkeley's theory at least has an answer to this problem, and it's one that seems, it seems to be okay, although people for some reason are just not comfortable. They think there's something wacky about Berkeley's theory.